Shedeur Sanders continues to be sidelined, despite showing flashes of brilliance that could have helped revive a struggling Browns offense. Stefanski's admission that starting Gabriel over Sanders was a mistake raises serious questions about how the coach has managed the quarterback situation. His initial reluctance to start Sanders has now come under intense scrutiny, with some insiders suggesting that the coach's reluctance may have stemmed from pride or internal conflicts.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Gabriel's consistent failures have only amplified the criticism of Stefanski's judgment. His struggles on the field, coupled with a lack of accountability, have turned the spotlight back on Sanders, who is still waiting for his shot. Fans, analysts, and former players are all calling for change, believing Sanders could bring the energy and leadership the Browns need to get back on track. The head coach of the Cleveland Browns has made a public admission that will likely go down as one of the most consequential moments of his tenure. He acknowledged that starting Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders was a mistake. This acknowledgement is not just a passing remark. It's a significant shift in how the Browns' quarterback situation is perceived, both internally and externally. Stefanski's recognition of his missteps signals that he may finally be willing to change course. But whether that will happen remains to be seen. For weeks, the decision to start Gabriel over Sanders has been a point of contention, both among fans and within the Browns organization. The core of the controversy lies in the perception that Stefanski, despite clear signs of Sanders' readiness, repeatedly chose to favor Gabriel, a quarterback whose performances have been far from stellar. This wasn't just about picking one player over another. This was about a coach who appeared to be blinded by favoritism, unable to make the right call despite the glaring signs that Sanders was the better option. It's important to understand the context here. Sanders, a young quarterback, showed flashes of brilliance early on. His leadership, his poise under pressure, and his ability to make plays during practice and games all suggested he was ready to lead the Browns. Meanwhile, Gabriel's performances on the field were marked by inconsistency, turnovers, and an inability to get into any kind of rhythm. Yet, despite all of this, Stefanski chose to stick with Gabriel, and the team paid the price. The fans, many of whom were growing increasingly frustrated with Gabriel's underwhelming play, made their feelings known. They started chanting for Sanders to be given a chance. But Stefanski, for reasons that remain unclear, refused to make the change, letting the situation fester. Finally, after a string of poor performances from Gabriel, Stefanski admitted that he had made a mistake. This wasn't just a coaching error. It was a recognition of what many already knew. Sanders was ready. He had shown the talent and leadership needed to succeed. Yet the coaching staff's reluctance to trust him had created a rift in the locker room and among the fan base. The controversy surrounding Gabriel's struggles and Sanders' sidelining has now escalated to the point where it's hard to ignore. The question now isn't just about who should start at quarterback. It's about whether Stefanski will finally correct his mistake, give Sanders the chance he deserves, and attempt to restore the team's faith in his leadership. Stefanski's admission of the mistake is significant because it's rare for a coach to publicly acknowledge a misstep of this magnitude. In many cases, a coach would try to deflect blame or justify their decisions. But Stefanski did the opposite. He recognized that his decision to start Gabriel had been flawed and that he had underestimated Sanders' potential. This in itself is a moment of self-awareness that could have a positive impact on the team moving forward. It could signal a turning point for Sanders' career, potentially offering him the opportunity he's long deserved. However, that opportunity still hasn't been handed to him, and until that happens, the lingering question is whether Stefanski will follow through on his admission and finally give Sanders a real shot. One of the most frustrating aspects of this situation has been Stefanski's favoritism toward Gabriel. From the start of training camp, it was clear that Stefanski had made Gabriel his preferred choice. Despite Sanders' clear talent, he wasn't given enough opportunities to prove himself. This reluctance to give Sanders a fair chance has created a tense atmosphere within the Browns locker room. Players can sense when favoritism is at play, and it's a dangerous thing for team morale. When a coach consistently shows favoritism, it can divide the team and create resentment. Insiders have hinted at the growing frustration within the locker room, with some players questioning Stefanski's decision-making and others openly wondering why Sanders hasn't been given a fair shake. The impact of this decision has extended beyond just the locker room. Gabriel's recent performances have been difficult to ignore. His turnovers and mistakes have been consistent, and there's been little indication that he's improving. Yet, Stefanski's hesitation to make a change has allowed this situation to drag on. It has become increasingly clear that Gabriel isn't the answer. His performance has not inspired confidence, and his ego has only made things worse. His public dismissal of Sanders as an entertainer only further highlighted his lack of understanding of what it takes to be a leader. That kind of response, in the face of mounting criticism, reveals a player who isn't willing to take responsibility for his role in the team's struggles. Meanwhile, Sanders, despite his evident potential, continues to watch from the sidelines. It's impossible not to see the missed opportunity here. Fans and insiders alike have been clamoring for Sanders to start, but Stefanski's reluctance to make the change has squandered valuable time. The team's chances of success this season are slipping away, and the longer Sanders stays on the bench, the more the Browns risk falling into the trap of wasted potential. The frustration among fans is palpable. They've seen Sanders' ability, and they want him to lead. They want to believe in him, but Stefanski has yet to give them the chance to do so. The fact that Sanders has been kept on the bench, despite the clear evidence that he is ready, speaks volumes about the coaching staff's inability to make the right call. This isn't just about one player's potential. It's about the direction of the entire team. When a coach fails to make decisions based on merit, it can undermine the team's trust in leadership. And when that trust is eroded, it becomes incredibly difficult to rebuild. The Browns are in a delicate position right now, and Stefanski needs to act quickly before the situation spirals further out of control. The team's trajectory depends on what happens next. If Stefanski finally gives Sanders the chance he deserves, it could ignite the offense and reinvigorate the team. It could serve as a rallying point for both the players and the fans. If he continues to stick with Gabriel, the Browns risk further alienating their fan base and deepening the internal struggles that have already been so apparent. The media has only amplified the criticism of Stefanski's handling of the quarterback situation. Figures like Stephen A. Smith have suggested that Stefanski may have fabricated a false injury story to justify keeping Sanders on the bench. These accusations point to a deeper issue, a lack of transparency and integrity within the coaching staff. The idea that Stefanski might have manipulated the situation to protect Gabriel only adds fuel to the fire. This sort of speculation doesn't help the Browns' reputation, and it further undermines confidence in the organization's leadership. As the pressure continues to mount, Stefanski's next move will be crucial. The fans are watching closely, and the media is waiting to see if the coach will finally make the change that so many have been calling for. The Browns are at a crossroads. Stefanski's handling of this situation will define his legacy. If he makes the right decision, he could turn the season around and restore confidence in the team's leadership. If he hesitates, the damage could be irreversible. The Browns' future rests on this decision. The clock is ticking. Fans, players, and analysts are all waiting for Stefanski to make the right call. The question is, will he? If you're as frustrated as the rest of us with how this quarterback situation is playing out, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Stefanski will finally give Sanders the opportunity he deserves? Or will he continue to ride with Gabriel? Like, share, and subscribe for more updates on this ongoing saga. The pressure in Cleveland isn't just building, it's boiling. With Kevin Stefanski's admission that starting Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders was a mistake, the dam has finally cracked. What was once whispered in post-game podcasts and debated in Reddit threads is now out in the open. The Browns didn't just mishandle a quarterback decision, they potentially sabotaged their own season in the process. Let's not sugarcoat this. Stefanski didn't just make a bad call. He doubled down on it week after week, while the evidence against Gabriel mounted in plain sight. The turnovers, the misreads, the stalled drives. It wasn't just a bad stretch, it was a pattern. And yet, instead of pivoting early, Stefanski stuck to a plan that clearly wasn't working. When fans started chanting for Sanders, it wasn't just desperation, it was clarity. They saw what the coaching staff refused to admit. Shedeur Sanders was ready. That readiness wasn't some hypothetical potential. Sanders had been proving himself in practice reps, preseason flashes, and internal scrimmages. His arm talent, decision-making, and leadership presence were all there. Everyone saw it, except the guy calling the shots on Sundays. What Stefanski's now admitting is something that fans have felt in their gut for months. The Browns might have already wasted what could have been a breakout year for a future franchise quarterback. And for what? Loyalty to a system that wasn't delivering? Comfort with a player who had already shown his ceiling? Or was it something worse, pride, politics, or plain old fear of change? From training camp forward, it was obvious that Stefanski favored Gabriel. He got more reps, more attention, more public backing. And every time Sanders made a highlight throw or displayed poise beyond his years, it was brushed off as developmental. The problem? Sanders wasn't just developing. He was outperforming. Coaches talk about earning your shot, but when it came to Sanders, that shot never came. And the locker room noticed. Sources close to the team say players began privately questioning the direction of the offense. Leadership was being asked about the plan, and the answers weren't inspiring confidence. When a young, hungry quarterback is delivering in practice and still riding the bench behind someone struggling under the lights, you create a fracture, not just in strategy, but in trust. And that fracture grew wider with every loss and every forced pass from Gabriel. The turning point came after a brutal performance that ended in boos from the stands and visible frustration on the sidelines. Stefanski, in a rare moment of public honesty, finally admitted that Gabriel might not have been the right call. It should have been a game changer, but so far it's just been words. Because despite that admission, Sanders is still on the bench, still waiting, still watching. And that's where this story gets darker. Because what's unfolding now isn't just about correcting a mistake. It's about whether a head coach is willing to truly let go of a failing narrative and put the best talent on the field, regardless of the optics, politics, or consequences to his ego. Every day Sanders sits, the question grows louder. Is Stefanski actually going to fix this, or is he just trying to save face? Let's be clear, this isn't about throwing a young quarterback into chaos for a spark. This is about giving a player who's already earned it the opportunity he's been denied. And if Stefanski is serious about turning things around, that opportunity needs to happen now. Because the longer this drags on, the more fractured the team becomes, the more alienated the fan base grows, and the harder it will be to undo the damage. This situation has also pulled back the curtain on something bigger than a quarterback battle. It's exposed deeper problems in how the Browns evaluate talent, make decisions, and manage accountability. If a coach can openly admit a strategic failure this significant, but the depth chart still looks the same, what does that say about the structure behind the scenes? Fans aren't just asking when Sanders will start. They're asking how much dysfunction it takes before something changes. They're questioning whether talent actually matters, or if politics and personal bias are driving decisions at the highest levels. That's a dangerous place for any franchise to be, especially one like Cleveland, where every inch of progress feels hard-earned. What's even more frustrating is that Sanders represents everything the Browns claim to want: leadership, energy, and a future to build around. He has the charisma, the work ethic, and most importantly, the support of the fan base. Fans aren't just calling for him to start, they're begging for it. They see what he could bring: hope. And in Cleveland, that means everything. This fan base isn't naive. They've been through quarterback roller coasters before. But this situation hits differently. Because for once, they can see the answer standing on the sidelines, wearing a headset and waiting for his shot. And the fact that he's still not getting it, even after a public admission from a coach, feels like a betrayal. And while the fan reaction has been passionate, it's not just emotional. Media voices have joined in. Analysts are torching Stefanski's handling of the situation, with some accusing the coaching staff of using a fake injury narrative to justify keeping Sanders benched. That's not just a bad look, it's a credibility crisis. When the public starts questioning whether your leadership is even honest, the fallout is bigger than any one season. It becomes a reputation problem, a trust problem. And in the NFL, those problems are hard to shake. At this point, Stefanski's legacy in Cleveland is hanging by a thread. If he pivots and gives Sanders a start, he might salvage this season, and maybe even his job. But if he continues to play it safe, ignoring the writing on the wall, the Browns could lose more than games. They could lose the locker room. They could lose the fans. They could lose Shedeur Sanders entirely. That's the nightmare scenario. Drag this out so long that Sanders starts to look elsewhere. Because a player like him won't sit quietly forever. He knows his worth. Other teams will see it too. And if Cleveland misses this window to make things right, they won't just lose a season. They'll lose a future. There's still time to fix this. Stefanski's admission was a first step, but now it's about what comes next. Words are cheap. Change is hard. But if Stefanski is truly ready to back up his admission with action, there's only one move left. Start Shedeur Sanders. Let him lead. Let the team rally around him. Let the fans believe again. Because continuing down the same road will only bring more of the same. And for a team that claims to be chasing greatness, that's just not good enough anymore. So the question now is simple. Will Stefanski follow through? Or will he cling to the past and risk everything? Right now, Cleveland feels like a pressure cooker with the lid barely hanging on. And at the center of it all is Kevin Stefanski, standing there with a ticking clock and one last decision to make. His confession that starting Dillon Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders was a mistake wasn't just an admission. It was a spark tossed into a room soaked in gasoline. And the longer he waits to act on it, the hotter everything gets. Let's not pretend this is just about football mechanics or QB stats. This is about leadership, trust, the direction of an entire franchise. Stefanski has put himself in a position where words alone won't cut it. The Browns fan base has heard enough. They've sat through enough misfires, enough letdowns, and enough years of quarterback instability to know exactly what this moment means. You finally get a promising young quarterback with real poise, charisma, and raw talent. And you bury him on the depth chart? That doesn't sit right. It never sat right. And now, thanks to Stefanski's own words, there's no spinning it. Because now there's no ambiguity. Stefanski admitted he was wrong. He underestimated Shedeur. And the word underestimated says more than people realize. It means he saw the talent, he saw the maturity, but he still didn't believe. That's not a scouting error. That's a failure of vision. A failure to recognize what was right in front of him while clinging to what felt safer, more familiar. And now, that comfort pick, Gabriel, has not only stalled the offense, but fractured the very foundation of Stefanski's credibility. Let's talk about that fracture. Inside the locker room, you have players who practice with Sanders every week. They see the sharp reads, the confidence, the drive. And then they walk into game day and watch a struggling Gabriel take the field again. That doesn't just confuse players. It demoralizes them. Because how are you supposed to buy into a vision when the person steering the ship keeps ignoring what's clearly working? The emotional fatigue of being part of a team where politics trump performance. It wears on guys. And once players stop believing that the best talent is being given a real chance, it's over. Trust is gone. And don't underestimate what that loss of trust means. Because if Stefanski finally decides to start Sanders, it won't be as simple as flipping a switch. It won't erase what's happened. It won't immediately fix the locker room tension or restore fan faith. He'll have to earn that back. Starting Shedeur will be step one, but the road back to credibility is long, and the margin for error? Razor thin. And while we're here, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the alleged cover-up. Media figures aren't exactly shy right now. The idea that Stefanski floated an injury narrative to justify keeping Sanders benched? That accusation didn't come from nowhere. Analysts like Stephen A. Smith didn't pull that from thin air. The timeline, the decisions, the deflection, It all adds up to something that feels shady. And when people smell dishonesty, they don't just criticize your coaching, they question your character. That's the fire Stefanski is playing with. Because once fans and the media think you're manipulating them, you don't get a second chance easily. Every move gets scrutinized. Every press conference becomes a test. So where does that leave the Browns now? In a weird way, this situation has backed the franchise into a corner with only one way out. Give Shedeur Sanders the job now, and commit to him fully. No hedge. No leash. No we'll see how it goes, conditional language. Because if you try to half-step this, if you name him the starter only to yank him after a bad quarter, the backlash will be even worse. Sanders isn't just a quarterback option anymore. He's the symbol of a team trying to do the right thing after doing everything wrong. You can't mishandle that twice. And if Stefanski still hesitates, if he walks back the admission, or worse, tries to downplay it, hoping fans forget, then it's not just Sanders' opportunity that's lost. It's Stefanski's legacy in Cleveland. Because when the story of this season is written, it won't just be about who started at quarterback. It'll be about whether the head coach had the humility to change and the guts to do it before it was too late. Right now, the fan base is on edge. The locker room is divided. The media is circling. And Shedeur Sanders is still holding that clipboard, watching games he should be leading. Tick-tock, coach. So what do you think? Should Shedeur finally get the start and bring new life to the Browns? Or has Stefanski already waited too long to make things right? Drop your take in the comments. Hit that like button if you've been yelling at your screen all season. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the wildest stories in football. We'll be here breaking it all down. Every twist, every quote, every meltdown. Stay tuned.